So we're going to be playing Atomfall at the end of March. So right now we're doing uh, the Division 2 and some No Man's Sky up until the 10th, and then we're going to be doing Assassin's Creed Mirage because I've never played it, leading into Assassin's Creed Shadows, and then after that we're doing Atomfall, which is on the 27th. So they just dropped a brand new extended gameplay showcase today, which we're going to take a peek at here. Because this is one of our upcoming games at the end of the month, and I can't wait to know more. Everything I've seen about this looks like an interesting blend of like Fallout, Stalker 2. There's just a little bit of like lots of different things going on here. Um, and I really enjoyed what was it, Sniper Elite Resistance, which was my first ever game from I'd ever played by Rebellion Studios, or Rebellion Games. Is it Rebellion Games or Rebellion Studios? I don't know. That was the only game I've ever played with them, and it was a lot of fun. So let's take a look at this new extended gameplay showcase developer spotlight on Atomfall
Rated
coming
M for
out
mature.
March
Hi, I'm
27th.
Ben Fisher, Head of Design at Rebellion, and I'm here to talk to you about Atomfall.
Creepy.
So Atomfall is a survival action game set in a 1950s quarantine in the north of England. After a nuclear disaster had an unusual fallout, the player wakes up in this environment and has to uncover what's happened and how they factor into it.
Who are you? What are you doing in here?
So there are a lot of games based in post-apocalyptic quarantine zones, but one of the founders of Rebellion, Jason Kingsley, noticed that there wasn't one based around the Windscale fire, which is one of the world's first major nuclear disasters. So he asked the question, what would it look like if you made a kind of Rebellion-style game in that kind of environment? So that was our start point. And the development process of Atomfall was finding the answer to that question. So part of the creative process of designing the atmosphere and environment of the game was looking at 1950s, 1960s England and using that real-world reference to build our kind of heightened fictional environment. So we looked at the environment around the real Sellafield disaster, the real Windscale fire, and that gave us real reference points for rural England and small villages you might visit, those kind of very British touch points like red phone boxes and details like that. What we found was we didn't have to invent very much to get the ball rolling. We already had a rich and interesting location in the real world that we could use as a start point. So one of the creative challenges in Atomfall was blending the natural beauty of the north of England with the horrors you might see in a nuclear disaster zone. The way that we tackled this was we considered the way that people would really try and deal with that sort of situation in a very kind of English way, very 50s, 60s English way. A kind of keep calm and carry on, stiff upper lip. These people have just come out of World War II and they know how to survive in difficult circumstances. So that was our start point, is treating these survivors like real people in a real situation. The next stage was taking that setup and adding layers and details that gave it a kind of atmosphere you might expect of 1950s, 1960s British speculative fiction. There's a great history of things like Doctor Who or the Quatermass experiment, very early sci-fi and fantasy before those genres had established themselves. So we could look at the elements that made up this kind of storytelling style and use them to heighten the environment the game was in.
Oh, traps!
What this means is that people are trying to live a normal life and trying to survive in their normal village, but that normal village has been occupied by a military force that's there to try and keep the peace. And when you push into those dark and mysterious locations that explain how this disaster happened, that's where the horror comes out. That's where these darker elements emerge.
You'll die here!
Ah, creepy guy in a clown mask. Kill him!
So this means that the gameplay tone of the game, pushing into darkness and uncovering uncomfortable mysteries, reflects the visual style of the game. So we just made sure that we aligned these two and use them to build on top of each other.
Yeah, killed out with fire, please.
So early in the development of Atomfall, some of the team went to the north of England to look at the sort of areas that are very similar to the locations around the Windscale plant itself, you know, the wider surrounding area, so that we could pick and choose details that seemed to tell the
Lake
story
District,
that we wanted
yeah.
to tell. One of the things that we found quite interesting and surprising is that there are members of the team that are from the UK and members that aren't. There are special details in the environment that we're very, very used to because we grew up here. And it was really helpful to have people from other parts of the world to point out, no, this is weird and special and you don't get this anywhere else. That gave us an inspiration to then really drill into our kind of built-in cultural knowledge of what feels authentic and realistic in that kind of location. So you've got pubs that feel like real old-fashioned pubs that were once a converted farmhouse.
Which, by the way,
and
UK does pubs
near
better
the
than
church,
anywhere else.
That's always what happened, and they were always uphill because that kept the rain away. And part of the creative process was kind of drilling down into this knowledge that we almost didn't know we had. So one of the goals we set ourselves for the storytelling strategy in the game was to make it kind of uniquely British. I would say that the characters that are in there and the storytelling style isn't something you would see in a game set in another location.
Come closer, I don't bite.
The characters that you meet in the game are often kind of heightened, stylized versions of old-fashioned British
But do they
archetypal
wander
characters.
around,
so
or do they just stand in one place? Because we do know that there are a subset of cryptobots out there who are going to freak the fuck out if the NPCs don't wander around and have day-night cycles, lives of their own outside of the
is
NPCs.
morally grey and ambiguous. It's a difficult situation.
Sorry, guys,
there's no clear right and wrong answers. You're just uncovering this tangled situation and deciding how you relate to it. Two of the major influences on that were folk horror storytelling, which is often based around the idea of a conflict between tradition and modernity, of folk religion against organised religion, and these kind of clashes.
In the meantime, be wary of this place. Do not be tempted to engage with any of the pagan sentiments.
Oh, if you guys didn't catch
they try to foist on you.
And then the other major influence on the storytelling
The second
was Cold War
Monster
fiction,
Hunter stream
which
I
does
did,
the same
we
sort of
showed
thing,
how
but
the
on a
NPCs
cultural
in
level
Monster Hunter
between
Wilds
East
are just
and
standing
West.
in
What
one
we
place
found
and
is
not
that there
moving
were
around.
themes that were
And
reflected
no
in
one
both
is
of these
complaining
different
about the
storytelling
NPCs not
styles.
moving around
And we
in
could
Monster
build
Hunter
a world
Wilds.
that explored all
Only
of
in
them from
Avowed
different
do they
angles.
care about
Both of these storytelling styles are morally grey, morally ambiguous, and don't present right and wrong
It's very
answers.
funny.
This gave us an excellent opportunity to put that in the player's hands, to let the player choose what they think is the right
Hypocrisy
answer.
at its
You're
finest.
right. You deserve to be left alone, just the same as me.
So we used the storytelling style of British literature to
I
help
know,
us
bro,
build
like,
this game.
shocked,
That allowed us
truly
to
shocked.
look very directly at points of reference from earlier British culture. So we're talking like The Wicker Man, we're talking Doctor Who, early Doctor Who, things like The Prisoner, lots of different kinds of folk horror as well, because the early folk horror all had a kind of
This
very
looks brilliant.
British influence to it, you could argue. So not only could we use this as the bedrock for our storytelling style, but also it was great inspiration for Easter eggs throughout the game environment. We tried to make sure that those were placed in locations that wouldn't distract the player from their investigation, but would catch their eye and maybe make them laugh when they see them. So one of the first things the player will see as they start the game is a ringing phone box. As they make their way across the environment, they can choose to answer it, or they can ignore it entirely.
Oh, I'll be
This
answering the
sets
phone.
up an air of mystery, of
'Cause I've heard
tension that the player doesn't know who
snippets,
the voice
and I need
is,
to know
what they
more.
want, but it gives them a clue, it gives them a lead that helps them explore the world and understand how it fits together.
This land looks safe. This land is not safe.
This moment was inspired by an anecdote by Jason Kingsley, one of the founders of Rebellion. He was out hiking somewhere and walked past a red phone box and it started ringing, and he stopped and thought, why is that phone box ringing? He didn't answer it. It's probably just as well because a mysterious handler might have sent him on a quest. We took that moment and thought this could be a very interesting way for the player to feel observed, to make them feel like they're part of a bigger picture they don't fully understand.
This land may kill you.
So the ringing phone box is the first example of how the player will explore the game world and understand what to do. They find a lead, they're not told what to do, they're just told information about the game world. They could completely ignore it if they want. They could answer it and track that lead and then try and follow what it understands in the world. Go and ask other characters about it, that sort of thing. Of all the characters that you meet in the game world, They're all entirely optional, and it's up to you if you trust them, if you listen to what they've got to say. It's up to you if you follow their instructions. They might offer to help you if you do certain things for them, and it's all left entirely up to the player. We avoided having a quest system because for the game that we were making, that felt quite leading, and over time we discovered this new mechanic where all of the information in the game world is interconnected as the player uncovers it.
She's usually
That's cool.
camped just north
So I'm
of
interested
here.
to see what they
And they
mean
have to
by
decide
that,
for
that there's
themselves
not a
what's true and
quest
not true.
system.
To the extent that the player can kill any character in the game
Murder
and
hobos
still
can do their
find
murder
a
hobo thing.
conclusion, find an exit. In fact, there are some routes through the game that will require you to kill a certain character to progress. The player's identity is the same sort of thing. You wake up in this quarantine zone. You don't have a specified age, race, or gender. You don't have a character that you can see in the game world, and nobody knows you. And there are characters very early on that pose the question to the player.
Ask yourself, if that is the sort of person you are.
It's up to you to decide what sort of person you want to be.
Snap!
As you make your way through the game world, there are people who might trust you because you're somebody new. They might be suspicious of you because you're somebody new. But that means that you're in a situation to kind of destabilize the world that you're in. You operate like a detective in that you push your face in places that's unwelcome and you uncover mysteries, understand the world as a result, but maybe make things sometimes better, sometimes worse by doing so.
Somebody kill the bastard!
And there are clues in the game of who you could be, but we make it intentionally ambiguous, so it's up to the player to decide what they think is right. So part of our planning and creative process was to look at other apocalyptic survival action games and decide what seemed like a good fit for Atomfall. What we decided to do
That looks
to approach it in quite a
amazing
unique
right
way
here.
was to look at it through the lens of being specifically British-style gameplay, British-style storytelling, but also leaning into the things that Rebellion specialises in.
Rats! Good
So,
ideas.
the world of Atomfall is a dense, concentrated sandbox. There's a series of locations you can travel between and unlock slowly over time, and the player uncovers information about the world and what to do in that
Winding
world. But it's all
down, Devon.
interconnected. That inspired us to make the length of the game something that was easily kind of digestible, so it feels like a TV miniseries or something like that. It's one extended story with lots
wow.
of branching elements that come off it, but it means that it's all
So he just said
interconnected
that
in a
a
dense and
digestible
textural
game.
way.
So
This
it's not
matches
going to be
traditional British storytelling style. We
who knows
also
what we're
looked
gonna
at
get
the
lengthwise
gameplay
here, but
of the
not
game. It didn't
something
seem like a
massive,
natural fit
which is
for the game
fine.
to be a full kind of run and gun extravaganza. If
After
it's set
Kingdom Come
in,
Deliverance
rural
2,
north
I'm
of
looking
England.
for
So
something
we
that's
balanced the game around feeling more like a
streamlined
blend, like
and
almost
shorter.
like a pub brawl. So there's lots of punching, kicking, throwing weapons at people to just make do with what's around you. There are some guns, but it's more like the sort of thing that you might find a farmer's got, so a farmer's shotgun. There's an occupying military force and they're armoured, but they've all been locked in this location for 5 years, so they don't have much in the way of resources by this point. So the player's really kind of making do with what they can find. They're not pushed heroically into every conflict situation. They can decide to back off.
Nice and slow now.
They can decide to de-escalate conflict. This gave it a very, very different tone, a very
Hobo with a
personal
shotgun.
tone, and it just seemed like such a natural fit for the world that we were building around the story. Player choice was central to the creative process of deciding the shape of Atomfall and what sort of game it was. In fact, there was a version of Atomfall earlier in development that was more like a Metroidvania game. So a sequence of locations you were sent through in a more guided structure. You gradually unfurled this game world, and by the end you would have a broad understanding of what happened. It felt too guided. It felt like the other characters were having the adventure and that you were kind of picking up the pieces after the fact. So we took a good look at the game and we opened all the doors. We made it as non-linear as possible. The player can go anywhere in the game world right from the start. Some places are much more dangerous than others, but if the player is observant and they choose their moment carefully, they might survive. They might uncover something that helps them understand the game world. The other major influence in making this game open sandbox structure was making every character optional to interact with.
Stay safe out there.
So there are many different interpretations of what's happened and many different interpretations
Sounds like there's
of
going to be a lot
how
of
to escape,
replayability
how to
based on
resolve the
choices.
situation. There's no main answer. There's no good and bad ending. There's just lots of complex murkiness, and it's up to the player which route they take. This also extends to the strategy that the player deploys as they're making their way through the game. There's lots of slightly randomized loot for the player to uncover. Enemy placements are long wandering paths, but also slightly randomized. So it's not like you can learn a perfect strategy and play through the game in one go. You really have to observe, you really have to engage with the situation you find yourself in, and then do the best you can. You'll never be working with perfect knowledge, but that's part of the fun and part of the texture of the game. So the story in Atomfall is structured like an interconnected web of situations, not one guided path. As a result of this, there are many different ways that the story can unfold, and then it's up to the
I am
player
a
which way it
hardcore
resolves.
ranger
They can
at
make
heart, so
choices
yeah,
that
I
make
may
one
go
character
bow.
live or die.
You're not going to try and kill
But
me, are you?
it sounds
They
to
can
me
find
like the
different
weapons are very
exits from this
situational
quarantine
here.
situation they find themselves in, and they'll have to make difficult choices on who
So-
to trust, who to betray, and what resources they want to find as
I have
they
no
explore
idea,
through this
you know,
game
if I
world.
can
It
use the
means that
same
no
weapon
two
the whole way
playthroughs
through.
are alike, and when we've been playtesting the game, even people in the team who understand how it's structured are playing in very, very different styles. So on a first playthrough of Atomfall, we want players to feel like they are the star of a dense, concentrated story. They've uncovered a mystery and then resolved it one way or another. But the player can't see everything in one playthrough. They'll make choices that, you know, when they open one door, they close another. And as the game progresses, there will be routes that just aren't available to them based
I
on
like
choices
this
they made
because
earlier.
that
So
means
I'd really hope that players
have
play
to
through
do
again
different
and get a
playthroughs
very
if you
different
wanna see all
experience
the-
and a different story, but still one that feels like they are the hero.
All the different endings you can play through it multiple times. Very happy with that.
If I had
not
to
a-
survive the
I'm not a fan
Atomfall
of, like,
apocalypse with one item
completionist
from the
mode,
game,
your
I would
first
choose the
time
metal
through.
detector.
I'm gonna
The reason
see
I would
everything.
choose
No,
that
no,
is
no,
it
no,
lets you
no.
uncover
I want games
resources
to
that
have
are hidden under the
replayability.
ground. So you might find a lunchbox cache which is full of loot, some food, might be some weaponry there, or a lead that helps you understand where to go in the world. That would be your skeleton key to survival, because that would let you find anything that you want. We've also got characters that you can barter with to trade items. If they've got something that's more valuable than what you've got, you can give them what you've got.
Nice trading with you.
So, metal detector's where I would start. If I had to choose a character from Atomfall to have a cup of tea or a pint with, it's a difficult question because they're all a little bit likeable, a little bit unlikable, and you've got to decide, like, you know, who's the friendliest. I would probably go for Nat. You maybe meet him very early on. He's a chatterbox, he's very friendly.
How do? Where did you come from then?
He has been kicked out of the village, so he probably wouldn't be allowed in the pub, so I'd have to find a quiet hut somewhere to have a cup of tea. We hope you enjoy the world of Atomfall as much as we've enjoyed creating it, and we can't wait for you to visit. Game launches March 27th.
I can't wait. We're going to be playing it. So hopefully you're going to be watching when I play it. But that's a wrap on today's stream, everybody. I'm going to go get some YouTube and TikTok shorts prepped and get this cut out to publish tomorrow morning for the people who weren't here for the stream tonight. And then tomorrow morning we'll be back bright and early around 4:35 a.m. Usually we've been starting with some more. We'll probably do some more Division 2 tomorrow morning and then go over to No Man's Sky after the fact. If you didn't get a chance to catch my playthrough of, I think it's pronounced Cairn, the mountain climbing game that made me sweat. Like my palms were sweating the whole thing. I had to dry my hands off like 6 times during that playthrough. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, that went out earlier today. And also we did a Clara Obscura Expedition 33 video this afternoon as well. So if you haven't checked those out already on YouTube, get a chance to check those out. If you're watching on Twitch right now, don't forget daily multi-streams happen in both places, but everything in between the multi-streams happens over on YouTube channel. So make sure to get over to the YouTube, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a great evening. Get some sleep.